And this one is from the AITA subreddit as well, and it is titled, "Am I the Astronaut for Ruining Thousands of Kids' Halloween and Not Feeling Bad About It?" Oof. Thousands? Damn. All right, here we go. I live in a large neighborhood, about 90 houses. We are what's considered the rich neighborhood. So our neighborhood has always been a hotspot for trick-or-treaters. We used to get about 700 to 1,000 kids a year. Holy shit. Yeah. What did we have last year? You remember? Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot of kids. She said 300 to 500 is what we had last year. I've always loved getting trick-or-treaters because my kids are teens now and don't trick-or-treat anymore. But in the last 4 years, it's gotten ridiculous. There's thousands of kids and their parents flooding the streets, people with hay in their rigs carrying kids around, trampling yards, littering candy wrappers everywhere, and the amount of small children walking around by themselves is appalling. People from the neighboring town of 30,000 people take their kids to my neighborhood. I was annoyed, but I never really did anything about it until 2 years ago. My daughter tripped and broke her arm. We didn't think it was a break, but we wanted to go to the ER anyway to get it checked out, and there were so many people in our neighborhood we couldn't get out. There were cars everywhere, lining the streets, parked in people's yards. It was horrible. We had to wait until everyone left about 1 a.m. to go to the hospital. My daughter had to wait in pain for hours. At that point, I was done. I contacted the neighborhood community and we managed to get some folks, cops mostly, to stand at the gate with a list and only let in certain people. Folks that lived there, family members, friends. If you wanted to get in, you had to be close to someone in the neighborhood. It was great. There were only about 300 kids in the neighborhood, and after that there was barely any trash. And we're doing it again this year. I recently told my sister what I have done and she got really angry. When we were kids, we had to trick-or-treat in other neighborhoods because we lived in a trailer park with no other kids. She told me I was a horrible person for ruining thousands of kids' Halloween. But honestly, I'm not too broken up about it. It was a hazard. If there was a fire or an emergency, no one would be able to get in to help. When I was a kid, there were never any cars lining the streets. The residents could get out if they wanted. It was never dangerous. I don't think I'm in the wrong, but I've always respected my sister's opinion. Am I the astronaut? Info, there was no one in the cars. They were parked in the middle of the road and in yards, so there was no way for me or an ambulance to get through unless every driver in that neighborhood at the same time went to their cars at the same time and drove out. My daughter was 13 and in that awkward phase where she doesn't want to bother anyone for help and said it didn't hurt that bad. I mean, you feel like our girls at 13 would just deal with a broken arm and not want to bother anybody about it? I don't think so. I don't think that awkward phase is not wanting to be a trouble to anybody. Yeah, thoughts here. What do you think? The hazard part of it, I can understand being upset about. The hazard part, like emergency vehicles have to be able to get in. They have to, and they're right. If it is a hazard, it needs to be throttled somehow, either with some kind of signage saying you cannot park your cars in the street or no parking allowed or whatever the case is. And they kind of took the extreme route on it and said, we're making this an exclusive thing where you have to be on the list to get in. And that is the extreme. And yes, a lot of kids are going to be disappointed. A lot of parents are going to be disappointed, but there are other neighborhoods. There are other houses. This isn't the only place to go trick or treat. And if it is, they definitely need to be allowed to throttle it and control it in some way. We have the opposite problem, or have had the opposite problem, as a younger neighborhood with a lot of new development that's gone on in our neighborhood. We recently just got filled up, really. You know, we're as a neighborhood community trying to make sure that people put us on their route because, you know, not enough people knew about us ahead of time. I think it's an NTA. Ultimately, it's an NTA. I'll go ahead and go there. It's an NTA because they had to do something. This is just the thing that they chose to enact. If they put signs up that said you can't park here, then the story would be, am I the astronaut for putting signs up that says you can't park here? So they'd park somewhere else and walk over. They had to do something about it. It was a hazard. And it was proven that it was a hazard. The people who park in the middle of the street and just leave their cars there, they're the assholes in this scenario, 100%.